Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Lionheart Radio. I'm your host, Rick Alexander. I'm the founder of Blue Aviv LLC in San Diego, California. I'm sometimes an ultra-endurance athlete, and I'm always a very curious human being. Today, I talked with Don Fletcher of the Mentality WOD. We had an absolutely great conversation about mindset, and as far as people I've talked to, nobody understands the mindset piece, especially as it relates to performance, than Don Fletcher. So I'm super excited to drop this conversation for you. We talk about motivation, we talk about mental toughness, and we also get kind of serious, and we talk about some of the questions associated with the recent tragedies in Las Vegas. And it's a really difficult thing to talk about, and I know that a lot of people have had a difficult time. And I had a little trepidation on whether I really wanted to bring it up or not. But, at the end of the day, I think one of the great things about podcasts is the fact that we all have this shared human experience. And if we can broadcast those conversations in order to help just one person, then I think I think it's a worthy endeavor. So, just briefly talk about that, and then we get into some other discussions and topics associated with mindset. So I really enjoyed this one. Without further ado, Don Fletcher. All right, thanks for tuning in to Lionheart Radio. My guest today is the founder, owner, and mastermind behind MentalityWOD.com, Don Fletcher. Thanks for being on today.
Hey, Rick, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so what is it that got you interested in the mindset behind CrossFitters in the first place? In fact, actually, you want to start? We can take it back a little bit and tell us a little bit about exactly what you do.
I like that question, actually, as a starter. But essentially, I help motivated, highly driven athletes who are mostly CrossFitters reach their performance goals. That's in a nutshell what I do. How I got interested in it, I was always just really interested in psychology and the mental aspect of sport performance. Grew up in high school and college playing sports, and just really was intrigued by the mental aspect. Like watching great athletes just stumble in competition, and then watching athletes who are not so great just excel, and just kind of figuring out and tuning into what that was all about. So out of college, I became a personal trainer and just got into fitness training and coaching, discovered CrossFit, and my mind kind of just exploded. It felt like, wow, everything that I've learned and experienced so far was kind of brought together with this sport, and it felt like such a good fit for my passions and my experience, just kind of blending together.
So when you started coaching the mentality piece, it felt like everything you had done up until that point kind of set you up and got you ready for this career?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, for sure. I was kind of thinking that I was going to work with athletes in more of a team sport atmosphere before discovering CrossFit. So that's kind of the path I was going, to work with college athletes, professional athletes, and more of a team building, team cohesion. That's kind of what I specialized in. And then, after getting involved with CrossFit, the more people I met, the deeper I got into the community. And as I began getting my certifications and coaching more and more, I just, it felt really right. It felt really right for the type of people that I was working with and what their goals were. It just felt like a right fit.
And so I think that's interesting, because a lot of professional athletes, especially at the Olympic level, there is a lot of focus on the mentality piece and the mindset and how you approach games and practice and the whole entire lifestyle. And I've actually had people on the show that work with them. It's not so obvious for the CrossFitter. Although CrossFit is such a mentally demanding sport, it seems like such a natural fit. And how have you found your reception into the sport?
You're right on that, and that's exactly what I was thinking. I think 6-7 years ago, I started putting out content on my website about the mental aspect of CrossFit, just to start to put out some awareness, get people thinking, get people talking about it, get it to be more of a part of our conversation. We were at that time, people were just so interested and intrigued with the program and just general movement, and starting to talk a little bit more about nutrition. But there wasn't all these specialty coaches and programs at that time. So I just thought, well, let me just add in my 2 cents, about the mental aspect, and get people a little bit more aware of how big of a aspect this is, and how much it can it can influence in a positive way or a negative way your performance. So I just started putting out free content, like daily posts, created a kind of social media presence, just started to try to share. Thankfully, I was in the San Diego area, so I could reach a lot of people, and a lot of people here knew about CrossFit, and it's a big community. So just began to preach it, really.
Right. And so I guess my first question then is, well, I guess it's not my first question, but my first question about working with athletes is, when you approach an athlete or when you decide to start working with an athlete, how do you even figure out what's going on upstairs? Because that seems like such an abstract, difficult thing to even begin tackling.
Yeah. If I don't know the person whatsoever, it may be someone that I have watched or studied or seen for many years that have been competing in the sport, whether it's at the games, regionals, or open level. So I may have some level of awareness about that person, but if I know nothing about their history or, kind of what performance related, I don't want to call them issues, but questions they may have or things they may have going on, I ask a lot of questions. I just try to get to know the person, I have a mental performance assessment that I have people just kind of fill out that just asks them about their day, about what they believe is holding them back, about their typical habits, and kind of probe a little bit and try to dig into that person and just get to know their motivations, get to know their strategies for things, and really just organically build a relationship about getting to know that person, not only as an athlete and as a CrossFitter, but beyond that.
And do you find that people are self-aware enough to give you an honest assessment of where they're at mentally?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's not even that people maybe aren't self-aware. It's that they're just not comfortable talking about themselves, especially when I begin to ask some deeper questions, like, tell me more about that, or how does that really make you feel? Those types of things. It's just often we hide that stuff, or we're just not used to talking about it. So once we develop some just commonalities and some casual conversation, the person begins to trust and open up a little bit more. But yeah, some people just aren't self-aware about what's really going on. And then it's my job to kind of throw them some bones and allow them to see what's going on.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note, the mentality piece is a very easy fit for CrossFit, because it seems to be your relationship or your ability to suffer seems to be very correlated to your success in the sport. But I do think that, no matter what your given pursuit is, the mentality piece is definitely applicable. So there's probably things that you teach that could absolutely be applied to distance runners or powerlifters, or would you say that's typically the case?
Yeah. CrossFit is an expression of fitness that, it's really intriguing to me, because the sport asks you to get decent, at least at everything. Right. And so, it requires a certain type of mentality. Like you said, the person who can suffer the best may have the best results. Well, yes and no. You also have to be willing to put yourself out there and expose yourself to your weaknesses and do things that are really challenging for you or not easy for you every day. And that takes a person that's not only willing to get really uncomfortable with how much it hurts, but also get really uncomfortable with facing, I'm not good at everything yet. Or maybe I'm terrible at this one thing or this other thing, but am I willing to, or am I excited about practicing that, regardless of how good I am at it? And that's just a different way of looking at things that I find that the best in our sport are, they're willing to do, and they're actually excited about doing.
So it seems obvious that a lot of the advanced or elite CrossFitters and elite athletes would want to work with you. But for us amateur exercisers that want to kind of improve our mentality and approaching, because there's a lot of people that do, especially in San Diego, you have the proving grounds competitions and a lot of the throwdowns that people are involved in. What do you think is the first step for people that are listening to this and might be curious whether they want to improve that mental piece?
I think the first step, like we already talked about, is some general awareness. A lot of people think about mentality or mindset as, oh, I just have to be more positive, Or if it's not be more positive, the other half of the people think, I just have to get myself to push harder, right? So we think about mentality or mindset as be positive all the time and push hard.
Right.
Like
for sure.
a mental toughness kind of thing.
Yep.
And that's what people think is mindset or mental training. It's way more than that. You know,
and
the
so
ability, it's a lot of things, but it's about getting your thoughts and your habits, your behaviors to work for you, to help you or to propel you towards your goals instead of hold you back or hinder you. So everything to do with, how you set yourself up for a workout mentally, like how you prepare for a workout, but also the amount of composure you can have in a workout when it starts to really get hard, or when someone starts to pass you, like, the person that you really don't want to pass you starts to pass you. Like, how do you respond to those challenges and to that adversity? And that's practice. That takes training. You don't just like have it or not. You actually can train your ability to be composed, train your ability to adapt efficiently. And oftentimes it isn't the person that can just push the hardest. It's the person that can maintain composure through challenges. That might be a mouthful, but I hope that makes some sense.
Yeah, and I mean, are you doing that through like mental cues or triggers, or because but then like one of my favorite quotes of all time: "Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face." Right.
Right.
And
right.
so how are you? Yeah. So how are people even remembering this stuff when they're in the middle of the fight?
Yeah. Some of it is actually training, like practicing those situations in your training, the ones that will make you uncomfortable. Whether it's, say you're a person that just like hates being hot, right? Like you just want like your shirt off. You don't want to be hot. Like that just bothers you. It's just, okay, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, like let's go to the gym at 2:00 in the heat of the day, and you have to keep your sweatshirt on and sweat, and you're going to do like a 20 or 30 minute AMRAP, something that's just a grinder that you don't really like, with movements that are just, monotonous.
Yeah. And
maybe no music either, maybe by yourself. And it's like continue to find ways to challenge yourself, not just physically, like not just do workouts that are hard. Like that's one thing, but like, it's not going to give you that much of an edge. A lot of people are going to do workouts that are hard because they think that that's what's like sexy and cool in CrossFit.
For sure.
But do workouts and do things in your training that are really hard for you mentally, and actually implement them and practice. How do I carry myself during that time? What is my body language? What is my facial expression? What is my breathing rate? What is my self-talk or even my language to others? Like, oh, this sucks. I freaking hate this. I'm so hot. Is it complaints, or is it like, yeah, bring it on. Like the more challenge for me, the better. I want to be as well-rounded and as adaptable as possible. So that's one example of how you can kind of train your ability to be comfortable being mentally uncomfortable, not just physically.
Right. That always seemed to be one of the most interesting things about Rich Froning in his heyday. All of these people would be throwing down, and every time the camera would pan to him, he always seemed to just be looking around, super calm and collected. Like, where's he at? Where's he at? Okay, I'm going to go a little bit harder. It was the weirdest thing. Like, he's playing chess,
Yeah, and that's something that in the more recent years, we have seen Matt Fraser develop. Like, and again, if you're a fan of the sport, you have seen this in athletes. You have seen the ones who have developed kind of wisdom and composure and the ability to adapt, and that helps them be a more well-rounded competitor, especially when we're talking about like a 3-day event. I mean, there's going to be a lot of shit that goes wrong, and there's going to be a lot of stuff that messes with you, not only during an actual event but during the whole weekend. So it's just managing stress, managing emotions, and being able to thrive, being able to perform in a way that you feel really proud of and excited about, regardless of what's going on around you.
So I think that's one of my favorite things about competing at any level is you can train all day long, but competition is rarely a perfect day. And so you get to feel what it feels like when the weights feel really heavy or
right.
Whatever it is for you. So people that are preparing for a competition, are there cues, triggers, things that you recommend in order to prepare for those things? Or is it, like you said, really just trying to face as many situations as possible?
Yeah, that's part of the training leading up to a competition. Again, I'm not talking like the week before, but just generally your training is adding in like those mental strength challenges into your training, situations where you can work on adapting. But leading into a competition, let's just say like a week or two out, it's really about getting yourself in like a really like laid back, relaxed, kind of lighthearted mindset. Like obviously you've heard it before, but like the work is done type of thing. But there's still a lot of time to get yourself in a good mental space. So yeah, there's not a lot of time in the last couple of weeks to like, super like make super gains in your fitness, but there's a lot of time there to be able to put yourself in a mentally really good headspace where you feel confident, you feel prepared, you feel like at ease, like I've done the work and I'm excited for the challenge. So there's practices that you can implement as far as like, the things that for you are relaxing or restorative, and for me, they might be a little bit different, but I definitely suggest doing things that are mentally restorative, rejuvenating in the week leading up to, and especially the few days leading up to a competition, spend some chill out time by yourself or with friends and family, or, kind of turn your CrossFit head off a little bit, but be able to do things that just help you feel good,
Sure.
There's practices like that, as well as just general mental preparation of writing down like who you want to be at this competition. How do you want to respond in the face of challenge? Like reminding yourself of the values and the characteristics that are really important to you, like bigger picture things, not just like exactly how you want the snatch to go on the second event, but how do you want to go about the weekend as a person? The reminders of how I want to go about this and why do I do this? Why is this important to me? Like those are really good things to run over leading up to a competition because it grounds you in what's important to you.
Sure. I really think that comes with the maturity of an athlete as well. So like if you can foster that, you can definitely, I think, speed up your growth as an athlete.
Totally.
Going into marathons and stuff, I would always be like training hard the week before, and it's like, look, dude, you're not going to get fitter in the next 5 days.
But for some reason, we think that that's what's going to make us feel more prepared.
Yeah, like cram.
Like if I just do a little bit more, then I'll feel more prepared. And most of the time, what it's going to do, it's going to leave us thinking we could always do more. Like we're going to do that last session, but then we're going to be like, but I could just do 10 more minutes of skill work on this.
Right.
It's going to leave us with this feelings that we're not quite yet prepared. We could always be doing something more. Instead of establishing a routine like, 3 days prior, 2 days prior, like I'm out of the gym, my phone is off, social media, like I'm limiting my social media, and create these practices that are like way more healthy for you. And again, set you up to be way more relaxed and level-headed heading into something that essentially is just what you love doing.
Right, exactly. You're competing because you want
to.
You
get to do something you're passionate about with a like healthy body, able body. Like how cool is that? How much of a blessing is that? But if we don't step back from some of the things that we get so caught up in, we never even appreciate like how awesome the opportunity is in front of us.
Yeah, and people forget that they're doing this because they love it.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's not their fault or our fault. It's the practices or the things we're doing, the habits that we are in that are kind of creating that mindset.
Sure. And honestly, like listening to you talk about it, you talk about being appreciative. It sounds like gratitude for you plays a big part in that paradigm shift as well.
Yeah, it does. I know it's one of those like totally cheesy, like soft, overplayed things, sure. Like mindfulness and gratitude and yada yada.
Especially now, it seems to be like trending.
It is, absolutely. But really, like it's the sense of appreciation, the sense of genuine, real, deep appreciation for not only what you can do, but that you have choices and you have abilities and opportunities, and you get to engage with, again, something you love, like something that challenges you and makes you a better person and hopefully has an impact on other people. Like it's really the understanding and taking those moments to appreciate all that is, all that you can do and all that, is happening.
Yeah. And that I kind of think like in that you have the ability to, going into the last race that I did was the hardest race I'd ever done. It was a 200 miler. And so I felt like I was really forced to figure that mindset piece out. And actually, it was like the first race that I wasn't freaking out because it was like 200 miles. There's no amount of miles I'm going to do in the last week that are going to matter. So like, just get your mind right. And it made such a difference in the whole entire thing. What
are a couple things you did like that just helped you feel better mentally?
I think for me, so I have spent a lot of time thinking about like what my mission is in life. And I kind of like put that through the lens of what my mission was. And I really got into this mindset where it was like, man, I have the opportunity now to complete this. I think part of my mission is like, I want to like inspire people to reach their potential, right? And so for me, looking through that lens, it was like, man, the universe is like soft serving this to me. Like I can just crank this out of the park. And I got in that mindset where it was like, I was just so excited to have the opportunity as opposed to being like, fuck, I need to train more.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so no one needs me or my services or anything. They can just hook up with you and do a 200-mile run, and that's mental training. That's all the mental training you'll ever need.
No, I don't think that's true. Because I got broke.
I mean, that's awesome. But I totally agree with you. When you really sit down to actually think about your purpose and your why and how that, whatever it is that you're going to do, whether it's an event or even just a daily workout or something that, has been building up for years. Like some people I work with are trying to make it to regionals or the games for years, and then that time is almost there. And it's like, it's so surreal, but taking the time to actually like recognize and remember, what this is all about and why this matters. And that if you can really come to a strong understanding and deep, meaningful reason, that's going to propel you through any tough time.
Sure. And I might recommend, like, if you could pay you for your services and not spend 3 days in the mountains, like there's a hierarchy here. Let's go that route.
There's something to be said about that. That's for sure.
So
I recommend all sorts of crazy things, especially to the athlete that's just really like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. It's like, all right, cool. Like, we don't try just your basic things like gratitude and visualization. And that stuff's cool, but there's way more than that, and I like to think outside of the box and challenge people to do new, interesting, different things to just stretch their mindset and stretch their experience.
And so that's interesting because I know you have your CSCS, you're the Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist. And so when you're working with athletes, you're doing the mindset stuff. Yeah. Are you actually programming workouts that are designed to help that mindset piece?
Sometimes. Most of the athletes I work with, I'm not their head programmer. Mm-hmm. They get their training or their programming from their coach or whoever they're working with, especially because I'm working remote with most of the athletes. But absolutely, if I sense something that I know, they're developing like fears about, or they might be avoiding, or maybe in the past it's just really messed them up, mentally or physically. They've had like a sticking point in an event or a competition with a certain movement or certain pairing of movements, a certain time domain. Absolutely, like we'll program them in different ways so that they just get more exposure and more comfort facing whatever that might, that variable might be. So I definitely, I can see all of the athletes programming, whoever I work with, and I definitely check it out and give suggestions and feedback, especially as it pertains to the mental components that we're talking about. And so that's definitely part of what I do. That's like a tool in my toolbox.
Yeah, it seems like with your background, you're definitely uniquely positioned to look at the programming piece as well.
Yeah, that's the cool part about this. I really feel that in order to, give the best coaching to CrossFit athletes, you really want to understand the strength and conditioning, the training that goes behind, like, what they're putting their bodies through, what types of commitments they're making, and, in their day with the time that they're allotting for training, and how they're dispersing that time and energy, because that's a big thing of what we talk about is managing like intensity and time, and how that's affecting their bodies and their minds. So it's up to me to be really tuned in with their programming as well.
Sure. So I ask a lot of our guests this, but I think nobody's better equipped to answer it. Do you think that mental toughness as a whole can be trained, or there's a very, very real, I would say maybe genetic potential to that piece?
I absolutely think it can be trained, but there definitely needs to be a willingness, meaning, there's definitely people who tend to be more competitive, that's sometimes, that's like a more genetic trait, innately competitive. And so sometimes that means that they're going to be more willing, and sometimes it doesn't. But in order to get or gain more mental strength or mental toughness, the ability to persevere when things are hard is kind of how I define it. You really have to be willing to seek out discomfort and not just wait till it happens to you, because it's going to uncomfortable things are going to happen to all of us in life, mentally, emotionally, physically. Like, they're going to come on us in life unless we're like in a bubble somewhere. But actually going out to seek out, like we talked about, things that are mentally uncomfortable, things that are physically uncomfortable, and then practicing your response during those times. That takes a special type of individual. But I believe it can totally be trained and learned if there's a willing participant.
Yeah.
And you have to have a reason,
Right.
People aren't going to just go do that. Like, part of my reason for doing crazy, weird mental challenges is literally just for fun, for experimentation. Like, take an ice bath or fast or, do all these different things that are challenging, like just for the experimentation of enjoyment.
Yeah, me too.
So
I think
some people are like, you're crazy, you're sick. And other people are like, that's awesome. But you have to have a reason. Maybe it is to make you a better athlete. Maybe it is to help you be a more resilient parent. Maybe it is to get you unstuck from something in your professional life. Like, there has to be a core reason for you to want to go seek out discomfort, because most people aren't just going to go do it for fun, like you or I. Some people, but
sure. Yeah, I think it's kind of like that Tim Ferriss quote. It's like the more adversity you build into your life, the less adversity that you don't build in has the ability to affect you. And that's not the quote, I butchered it, but basically what he's saying.
Totally get it.
Okay.
Yep.
What about motivation? Do you think so especially right now with Instagram and like memes and all of this this shit that's just everywhere, do you think that motivation has to be intrinsic, or do you think that it can come from an outside source and be lasting?
I think knowing that you truly want something for a reason that's powerful to you is going to definitely keep you engaged longer and help you be more successful when things are hard, versus doing something because someone else thought it was a good idea for you, or it's someone else's goal that kind of looks cool to you. More like externally motivated factors. You might find that your motivation is a little bit more fleeting, and you're not as willing to do the things that are uncomfortable, or to commit to the types of training that's going to really help you be successful. So really tying in your why and your reason for training or for competing or for participating in a certain event to one of your values, to something that's tied into how you want to live your life and how you want to go about what it is that you're involved in. Like that's going to definitely help you be motivated for longer and help you have the reasons to want to push through things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah. And so what is your why? And then how did you go about finding that? Because it's a very kind of esoteric thing to try to figure out. It's not concrete. And so it's daunting, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why, Jesus. Like, that's what people say.
This is that's like a whole different hour-long episode that we could get into, for sure. But in short, my why is really to serve others with the gifts I've been giving. I feel truly that I've come to a place that I can recognize that God's given me unique gifts that I had nothing to do with. Like, they were in me, and I was blessed with the passion to want to get into sport and sports psychology and mindset and CrossFit. I was blessed with the passion to be really interested in pushing personal boundaries and peak performance. Like, those were gifts that now I realize that I have within me that I want to be able to share with others, to use to help others, to use to make other people live a little bit better, a little bit healthier, a little bit more meaningful and fun-filled lives. So, that's really my goal every day, is if I can impact one person in a deep, meaningful way and make a change, or help them start making a change, then I feel really fulfilled.
So what's really interesting is, and it's taken me a really long time to figure out, is for whatever reason, it seems like the human condition is hardwired to want to help people out. For some reason, when you have that as part of your why, it seems to be stronger. It seems to be like, maybe because it's something beyond yourself. Like if you look at something like nationalism and how powerful our military is, right? Like, yep. I think that works because in general, people tend to want to live for reasons beyond themselves a lot more than just making fuck you money or whatever other kind of materialistic why. Can you comment on that, or has that been your experience?
Yeah, there's a Viktor Frankl quote I love, basically about if you're not seeking purpose, you're seeking pleasure. But basically the difference between just doing things that are to satisfy yourself, and that's kind of the path I was on, like get my master's degree, move to San Diego, open my own business. It was all of these things that I thought I wanted to do in order to feel like I was achieving or feel like I was getting to the next level. And it was kind of this mindset that was really revolved around self-improvement. Not that that's all bad, but there is a point in time where that will run dry, in my experience. Doing things that are self-serving or just so you can have a sense of quote unquote accomplishment because you tried hard or achieved something, and or you experience some pleasure, whatever that is that feels good to you, that will get old or run dry, or it will feel like you are missing out on something and
right,
you just
like
might not know what,
because
you're like,
point.
I got to get drunk again tonight, but you might not know what, know?
Right.
But that's been my experience. It's like, wow, maybe there's more to this. And it takes some time to kind of figure out, and I'm still for sure 100% figuring it out, but it takes some time to realize that self-serving practices are not going to fulfill me in the way that they would if I steered all my energy into pouring out and giving to others.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Viktor Frankl, I can't remember the name of the book, but he said, like, man can bear any suffering as soon or as long as he can find meaning behind it. And
you are good on the quotes.
Yeah, I've got them in there. I do this a lot. But his book on finding meaning in life, because he was a Holocaust survivor, and it's absolutely great book. Actually, we'll link it up in the show notes of this episode.
Yeah, that would be good, because I forget what it's called too.
Yeah. So in one of your recent blog posts, you were talking about your why, and one of the things that you cautioned against is asking why too much. Now, like right now, we are in a time, especially as we're recording this, it'll come out in November, but we're just within a week of the Las Vegas tragedy. And I think that there's a lot of people right now that are stuck asking, like, what the fuck kind of world do we even live in? Mm-hmm. Can you speak to that a little bit about maybe the dangers of asking why too much and how that can actually hinder your progress?
Yeah, specifically for the time that we're in, obviously there's we're going to react in a way that sometimes doesn't make sense, and that is okay and good. Some of us just need more time for mourning. We're like in a state of like shock and confusion and just like, what the fuck, like can't even function type of thing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like different things that people are feeling in a state where they're so mad or sad or thrown off or shocked by a terrible event like what we just had with the Vegas shootings. When it does come to a time that you're trying to wrap your head around it, like that's what we try to do as humans, right? Like something, like find something that makes a little sense, and then we're like, oh, okay, like that's why. Yeah. And then we can move on more peacefully. For some reason, that's just what we want. We want a reason or an explanation. And so we spend a lot of time there, in our heads, like trying to figure out or trying to decipher something. And that's not always helpful because sometimes there's not a clear reason why. There's not going to be some little nugget that we come upon and we're like, oh, okay, that makes it all better, Yeah. And I think that's what we're facing right now. Like there is not a clear why to why this happened or why this person did this. We can't wrap our heads around it, and we can't point a finger or blame and it leaves us in a state of just like, oh gosh, like inactivity. Right.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
And so I think that the warning there and the kind of what I was talking about is it's great to ask yourself why am I doing this? Why did this happen? Like, why does this matter to me? And probe a bit. but it's not great to stay there when there's not a easily, there's not an answer that's just easy to come upon.
Yeah. Yeah. And
because then we just totally forget about, well, what about the how? What about the action? Like, we may never know. So like, what are we going to do? You know? And sometimes just staying in our own heads limits us from action. What we need right now is action.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And that's the hard part is, I think, at least in people that I've talked to, like I was talking to a friend who was very affected by this. And she was like, I just find myself staring at my computer at work during the day, asking myself, like, why the fuck am I even here right now? Like, what does this even matter? And so sometimes, like, it seems like it can be a spiral. And then sometimes, and this is what I think is really important, is whether you can figure out a way to use it as a catalyst for action.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, not to rush that, because I think many coaches and people in mindset are going to be about, use this, right? Like, use this terrible incident, make the best out of it. Something good can come out of it. Like, let's go, move on. We got to organize the troops. Wait a second. Yeah. Like, let yourself stare at your computer. I mean, what we're talking about right now is really different than maybe the example in the blog I was talking about, like related to like a CrossFit goal.
It just happened to kind of speak to me.
Yeah, but I appreciate the conversation, It's like, allow yourself to be stunned and like go between like, what the fuck am I doing? And then crying the next minute, and then maybe even laughing because you're just so like confused, bewildered. There's going to be all sorts of things that happen emotionally. Like, allow yourself to feel those things and process it. And it's going to take time. The closer you are to some of these tragedies, the more time it's going to take. And rushing on without feeling those is only going to mean that emotion is going to continue to maybe haunt you in different ways. Not that it's going to ever go away, but we really want to create time and space and allow people to process things as they're going to, without trying to rush past that.
Yeah. And on a little bit of a lighter note, it seems like we're always wanting to, like, it's almost like we need like when you see people break up, right? They're like, I just need closure. And it's like, and it seems like sometimes that really is just a road to nowhere.
Exactly. Great example. It's like, allow yourself to feel the heartbreak, allow yourself to process a little bit of what's going on. Like, be sad, be mad, talk it out, work through it with some friends, therapy. Like, that's really healthy for us. And it's not something that is talked about or promoted a lot within our society. Yeah. It's like, feel, like, allow yourself to feel. And it's going to be messy. It's going to be all over the place. Don't try to figure out every one of your feelings. Just let yourself feel. Right. Yeah. And then it's like, all right, now maybe it's time for some action. And for everyone, that length of time is a little bit different. But I like allowing yourself time to feel, maybe take some proactive steps. Allow yourself time to feel, take some proactive steps. Like, kind of combine those things and really just create space for both.
Yeah. And in the spirit of god-awful segues, I'm going to get back to fitness right now.
I can't wait to hear.
When I'm like, I don't know where to go from right here. I don't know why I walked into that corner.
You sure did.
Yeah. So with
honestly, I appreciate that, because I honestly have been having a really hard time these past few days, and I find it challenging to get on a podcast or to post on my social media and just act like everything's like, oh, cool, here's a mindset tip. Fuck that. Like, no, here's a way you can take proactive steps towards gun control. Like, whatever it is, like, I find it really challenging just to gloss over all this. And so here we are 2 days after the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. And I appreciate you bringing up something like that, because it would be harder for me not to talk about it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, it seems callous to just go on with life. And that's why I kind of like talking about the reaction to it all. It's like, how can you get yourself in a good headspace following something like that? And then also too, like, do you even need to, like you brought up?
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about fitness and we're talking about setbacks as well, that's part of bouncing back as well, right? Like, within CrossFit, you'll see it too. Like, sometimes when you have a bad workout or a bad day, it's like, how bad does your bad day bring you down? Does that seem to be a lot of what you do, like trying to help people kind of rebound from having a bad day, from putting a bad experience or a bad event or a bad lift behind you?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Again, knowing that we are all going to have those experiences. And the first thing is reorganizing your mind to understand that it's not about visualizing a perfect event. You know, it's about understanding and going into something knowing there's going to be setbacks and knowing there's going to be struggles and knowing that it's going to be hard. If you're an athlete who wants to push yourself, you want it to get hard. You want to come up to failure. You want to get to the point where you miss. Like, you want to push that threshold in your training and in competition, because that's how you're going to expedite the learning process, and that's how you're going to get better, you know, and most likely set yourself up to win. So yeah, a lot of what I work on with athletes is about responding to setback, mishap, failure, no rep. And again, it's about being thoughtful and about intentionally knowing how you want to respond to those things that are going to happen if you keep pushing yourself.
And so it's kind of just, is it a matter of visualizing those experiences? Because sometimes it seems like a lot of the setbacks that happen, especially in competition, you were never ready for. Like, that was the experience in my last race. Like, I was like, I planned for every bad scenario, and then the only ones I didn't plan for seemed to be the ones that happened.
Right. And sometimes you can visualize a certain number of things that may go wrong. It might not be exactly what could go wrong, but certain types of things that could go wrong, say with environment, say with gear, say with your actual execution, say it's with equipment. Like, you can kind of categorize these things that could potentially go wrong so that you think through your responses to them before they happen. But other times it's about using those skills that you have built in your training and your visualization on the moment, whenever it's something that you least expected, right? It's like, how well can I adapt? Not harping on the failure, harping on the miss, or, oh my gosh, this happened, but how well can I adapt? How quickly and efficiently can I adapt? And on the best way, in my opinion, to adapt, especially like after an event that didn't go how you wanted it to, is to figure out what you learned. Like, yeah, this went wrong, or this didn't go how you wanted it to. What'd you learn? You know, and when you can take a learning lesson from something, and sometimes you have to get creative, you know, like sometimes it's just like, I learned not to do this, or I learned that I can do this differently. When you can take a learning lesson, all of a sudden you're better. You're better right then because you learned. You know, you're not better because the mistake happened. You're only better after reflecting on the mistake and understanding what you could do either better or differently in the future. You already made yourself a better athlete. So it's just creating new thought processes.
Yeah,
you know?
I like that. I like the idea of making the actual adaptability to what happened a metric almost.
Yeah, I will ask the athletes I work with afterwards. Like, they know when I ask them, how'd you do? They don't say, I got 8 rounds and 7 reps. They don't answer me with their score or their time.
Right.
I say, how'd you do? I'm asking about their mental performance, you know, which is about their effort on a 1 to 10 scale, their execution on a 1 to 10 scale. And then, what did you learn? You know, like, what were your takeaways? And it might be just something about pacing. It might be something about, you know, I didn't adapt well, or I broke down too early, or whatever. But they're gonna actually be able to look at their performance as if they were a coach, taking the emotions out and being able to give themselves constructive feedback. And that's where you have gold. Like, that's where you have an athlete who's really excited about learning and growing and improving and getting better. And then we may talk about their time or their score or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I'm always interested at how, and it sounds like your system and your approach is really cool. I'm always interested at how coaches go about that. Like, you hear the stories of Michael Phelps' coach, like, fucking his goggles up on purpose on meets that didn't matter, so he had to deal with it. Like, that's kind of an infamous story.
Yep.
I heard Ben Bergeron talk about wearing a rubber band around. He makes his athletes wear a rubber band when they say something negative about themselves. They have to snap themselves. I tried it. I got like 3 days down the road, and I was like, what is this rubber band? And I was like, fuck.
Totally forgot about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's different ways for us to learn, you know, again, just having the mindset of like, I want to learn and grow as much as possible. That already is going to just open you up. Instead of like, I want to win, or, you know, I want to get this result. Like, I want to learn, develop, grow. I always want to be looking for a way that I can get a little bit better. That's going to help you a lot more in the sport and outside of it.
Yeah. Are there any things like actual physical things that you do? Like an example,
What do you
like,
mean?
well, like the rubber band thing. Like, is there anything actually
No, I'm not a huge fan of the rubber band thing, like at
that didn't
all.
work for me at all?
No, not as far as like uh, making mistakes goes, or adapting. Like I can't think of a physical thing. Like some people actually use a physical cue, like they might like slap their leg or like snap their fingers or clap just as like a reminder, like to snap out of it. You know, like
Yeah,
say
yeah.
say you miss a lift, like you're doing like you're climbing in your snatches, you're at 90%, you miss it, and you're pissed, right? So you can be pissed, stomp your foot, be like, ah, but then what's the next thing you do? Like after
Right.
you made your initial reaction to that I'm mad, what's the next thing you do? You know? And I might have people like jump a little bit or shake out their shoulders or like create a new routine. Like you just express that you're pissed, but now what? Right? Shake
Mm.
out, smile, and just say like, I got this.
Yeah, it's
So
like
like
you're
you're
moving into
creating
the
a
next
new,
thing. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
It's just that reminder that we all often need, like that's over. You know, that lift is in the past, that no rep is in the past, like that's over. So sometimes a little physical cue of like just slapping your leg or just like shaking your head or whatever it is, smiling, like jumping up and down. It's just this little cue to yourself, like that's done, fresh start,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I like that better because it's like, man, if I could remember to snap myself, I'd remember to snap the hell out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So I
And
know
then you have like it written on your hand, snap your thing, and then you have to snap the thing, and then you remember, and then you're like, why do I have snapped
Right.
the band
Right.
on my hand?
Yeah, at some point, it all seems counterproductive. So
It is.
I like your approach
Really,
of just going into the next thing. Like,
yeah, that negative self-talk is a different issue, but understanding what you're saying to yourself and why is a far better approach than just slapping your wrist every time you say something or don't say something. You know, gaining some understanding about like, why do you think that, you know, and where's that coming from? And often that's a pretty deep conversation because it can stem back to our past, you know, in different ways. But gaining some understanding about why you're saying what you're saying and really listening to what are those things that you consider negative that you're telling yourself. I think that's a stronger approach because then we can actually learn about what's going on instead of just doing like a quick fix, like don't do that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we're kind of running out of time, so I definitely want to get this in there. Going into or coming out of the CrossFit Games this year, were there any big lessons that you learned from the CrossFit Games this year?
Oh man, Madison was awesome. That was a cool experience. I don't know, that doesn't classify as a lesson, but I can say one thing, that experience doesn't make you better. Being in the sport longer and just having more experience at the games or more experience at regionals doesn't make you better. Just because
Really?
you have experience doesn't mean you're going to be a wiser, more mature athlete.
Hmm.
Learning from your experience, reflecting on your experience, working with a coach who helps you take, you know, gives you tangible exercises or feedback or drills to do because of your experience is what's going to create a better athlete. So you see athletes that have been at the games now 3, 4, 5 years making the same mistakes or again, not being very composed or adaptable because they're so focused on just grinding, you know, and you see that there's their experience hasn't helped them so much, where someone might only be there 2 or 3 years and you've seen their maturity and their wisdom just grow exponentially because they're actually working on factors like mental performance. And they're actually learning about themselves, studying film, practicing new habits, putting themselves in uncomfortable situations. They're developing these components that are going to help them be a more well-rounded athlete.
Yeah, I think that's great because I think so many people, they finish something and they focus on the horizon of what's next instead of reflecting on like what actually worked and what didn't, so that they're, you know, better positioned to kind of double down and go forward.
Yep.
Yep.
I mean, I've worked with people who've been there 8 times. I've worked with people who've been there 1 time. And, you know, I encourage the people who've been there 1 time not to use the word rookie. If you start to see yourself as a rookie and talk about yourself as a rookie, then that's what you're going to be. But if you reflect and learn and look at all the experience that has gotten you to where you are, you may have far more competition experience than someone who's been there 7 years.
Yeah, right.
You know, because you're actually appreciating and learning from what you've done, learning and growing throughout the years in a different way, a really more intentional way.
Sure. All right, it's time for the Lionheart Kicker. So the final question is, if and this you can do this based on whatever you want. It can be mentality, it can be mindset, it can be life, whatever you want.
Okay.
If you were given a platform Hopefully Lionheart Radio will be that platform. And, and what you said, we're guaranteed to be translated in every language and everybody in the world would hear it. What would you tell people?
I'm going to go not so serious right now. And
Sure.
I would tell people to try a lot of different, fun, ridiculous things. Like, instead of just going through the motions every day and just doing the same thing every day, just try more stuff. Put yourself out there. Go participate in new things and create the habit of doing something new and different, like, more often in your life.
Yeah, absolutely love that advice, actually, because I think a lot of people don't go after what they want because they don't know what they want, because they haven't been exposed to enough experiences.
If you try enough new things, you're gonna find something that you love, that lights you up, that you would never have known, like that is even an option until you try it. And so I just really encourage people to to go put themselves out there and just really keep trying new, different experiences. Do more memorable things.
Right. Yeah, and I really like that, because the flip side of that too is you're going to find out there's a lot of shit you actually don't like. You just kind of like the idea of, and you can get those out of your life. Yeah,
that's so true. And then you have the experience of laughing about it or talking about it, and being able to relate to far more people because you now have this gained experience.
Right. So for people that are listening to this and they want to follow along with your journey and support what you're doing, what is the best way for them to do that?
Mentality WOD on Instagram, Mentality WOD on Twitter and Facebook, mentalitywod.com. Be coming out with a new program, like a comprehensive Mentality WOD program. So in the next week, you'll be able to sign up on the email list for that. If you have a personal question, dawn@mentalitywod.com, and I can see if I can help you out.
Awesome. And you have some resources available online right now,
Yep.
don't you? Okay, perfect.
Yep, some programs, some ebooks, and again, there'll be just more to come in the future.
Sweet. Well, we'll link all of those up in the show notes of this episode. So, Dawn, thanks for being on today. I really appreciated this. I enjoyed this
thank you. It was really fun.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thanks for listening to Lionheart Radio. I hope that the information from today's show will make you fitter, happier, and healthier. For the show notes of this episode and every episode, head to www.lionheartrad.io. Yep, just like Lionheart Radio. And please, if you have the time, head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. It really helps us to know that we're on the right track in delivering you reliable information and value. As always, feedback is welcomed. If you have any comments on the show or would like to suggest a guest, send me an email at rick@luavive.com. That's LUAVIVE.com. Thanks for your support, and we will see you next time.
Bitch, I feel good. Don't I look stupendous? My shine is so endless, and shit you can do to end this. Even when I'm dead, niggas still gon' bump that chip shit. Coke, white, Escalade on cinches for you dipshit. So you won't forget this. Midwest nigga be the coldest. Cleveland